So today is Tuesday, December 18th, and after searching and searching and searching all over the place for stockings for the boys, I came across this sweater. This sweater is a size small, and so that will definitely not fit me because I'm a large. And I found the sweater at Goodwill, so the sweater was a total of $3.49. And when I saw this, I thought at first, oh my goodness, this pattern right here. I'm not a big green fan, but I loved this pattern right here, and just a little bit of green in the trees and the light blue sky. I thought this would be perfect for a stocking for the boys. And then I noticed this motif down here at the bottom as well. So my plan is to cut it out up here, and then on this line right here we will sew this backwards so it folds over like a cuff, just like this stocking would fold over and it would look like that. And fortunately I had one of these cheap dollar store stockings, so I got an idea of the fit, and I was so happy to see that this stocking actually matches, or it fits on the half here. So that gives me a pattern. Now, before I do anything, what I'm going to do is I have this stabilizer, and it's a nice hefty piece. So because I'm working with a sweater, I'm going to be taking the stabilizer and gluing this on the wrong side so that it will stabilize the stitching. Obviously a sweater can unravel rather quickly, so before I sew it together I want to stabilize it. So I'll be putting this on with a sewing machine, with the iron, so that it's stable before I actually sew it together. This will also give me a way to match up the pattern, because as you can see on the back of the sweater, the pattern goes all the way to the back. So another way of being able to match the back side when I cut it out, the stabilizer will help me to do that. So that is the first step, is to get the stabilizer ironed to the back side of that. Okay, so here's a sweater, and what I've done just now is I've cut out the pieces of stabilizer so that it will hang over just a little bit of the edges. The first thing I want to do though is I want to go ahead and cut off the sleeves, and I'm going to go ahead and just try to save this line right here on both sides, because you know what, I might do a future project, there might be a future something, so I'm going to save the sleeves, and I'm going to try to preserve that seam again. Okay. The other thing is this sweater is 100% wool, so I could also try to felt it later, which means you wash it in super hot water. I may or may not do that. Okay, so my sweater's turned inside out, and the other thing about cutting off the sleeves is I can sort of get an idea of how close those are to each other, so it might make it easier later when I cut out the pattern and then sew it together. So I'm going to go ahead and put this right over top, and because I'm not sure, whoops, wrong way, there are little raised glue bubbles, and so I can feel that that is the side that needs to be down on the sweater. So I switched it, and since my peninsula here is the right height and is really hard, I'm going to go ahead and use the peninsula instead of my ironing board. I've got a really hot iron that's not going to reach because the cord is too short. So I'm going to move that real quick. Okay. So now what we're going to do, I'm going to make sure all my edges are covered, but I don't want to go over this edge. So I want to make sure that it's there. Okay, beautiful. So starting here, I'm going to go ahead and press that down and just let it sit for a moment. And then I'm going to slowly press and move towards the top. Because again, this is going to get folded over like a cuff on the stocking. So I want to start on that edge. All the rest of this will basically be sewn. So those edges will actually be connected with the thread. But this right here is the only part that will not be sewn. So that's one of the beauties of this type of project, is you'll have that one edge that's all taken care of. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and finish this up. Make sure that this stabilizer is all well and glued down, and we'll come back and show you the next step. So now I've got this all secured the way that I want it. The next thing I want to do is I want to get this cuff off of here, but I also want to figure out how much space I've got or that I'm going to need for the stocking part. So I can see how far up it's going to go, and that gives me an idea of how much width I've got here. Now the nice thing here, I'm going to use my straight edge and I'm going to use pins to mark out where I'm going to cut, and I can actually use these lines that are here in the sweater. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 will keep me just to the bottom, and that is also about 4.5 inches. So we're going to start over here, mark it 4.5 inches. So that's the first one that I put in, and now I'm going to go over here and count and see if that's the same, if that's true on this side as well. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, it is. Okay, good. So yep. So I'll put the next one right here. And I'm going to do the one here in the middle. Six, 7. Come down just a tad on there. Okay, the last thing I want to check is this middle one. Make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep, good. Okay, now I'm happy with the placement there. Get that out of the way so I don't cut it accidentally. And actually what I'm going to do here, I'm going to cut off the yellow ones. So I'm going to go ahead and just put in another row here along what's going to end up becoming the seam allowance. Okay, so cut off with that yellow one. I'm just going to follow that line that I had done before. Like so. Remember, I checked the other side to be sure that it was even. So these now, what I'll probably do is I'll just cut it in half and put a seam right here on the half, so that when it gets rolled over on the stocking, that's what it will eventually look like. So that is the cuff. We're going to set that aside. Okay, so this is the part that really makes me nervous. But one of the things you can do when you pick out your sweater is find a sweater that's made very well. This sweater, the seams were matched very well when I bought it. So I knew that matching it at the time was not going to be terribly difficult. One of the things that you can do to check how things are matched, I don't know if you can see, but this is where the tree is on this side. I'm going to go ahead and put a pin right through there, and then I'm going to peek. And I'm going to check things out inside, and you see here how right here where the pin is, I'm not quite matched up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a peek in here in the sleeve, and I'm just going to match that line up and come in here and match that line up. And again, I'm going to roll this up and take a peek. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just try, if you can see here, to make sure that this line, and this line here are perfectly together. And I think what we'll do, since I'm satisfied with that, is I'm going to go ahead and join it right there in the middle. Working with a sweater or quilt pin probably would have worked a little bit better because they're longer. But I'm going to go in here again and match up my line. And since I'm going to be cutting on the edges here, I'm going to go ahead and put it right in the middle here. Since that part is going to be, I'll be cutting around that. I'm going to peek in again to make sure I'm satisfied with that. And then I'm going to do the same thing right here in the middle. If I'm satisfied that my lines are together, I'll go ahead and pin that in. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you that yes, I'm a little bit nervous about this because I want it to be perfect. You'll see I've got enough for a seam allowance down here at the bottom. And I'm actually going to not worry so much about the seam allowance. I'm going to end up coming in 1/4 of an inch on this stocking, only because down here is the seam where the sleeves were put together. So I'm going to lose that anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and not worry about that. And what I'm going to do, I want to be able to remove the stocking as I. No, that's not true. I'm going to pin the stocking right where it is, and I'm going to cut around the stocking. So I'm going to pin that. Ouch. Try not to stick myself. And I'm also going to lose a little bit here on top, but that's okay too, because remember we have that added cuff, so that will take care of some of the distance. Some of the length. Ouch. Okay, so I'm feeling good about how I've got it pinned. And just to make my life less miserable, I might, let's just see. No, I'm not going to do that. That might be too bad. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and cut this out. This is the moment of truth, folks. So you just have to be brave and do it. I know I'm on the edge because I can feel the tension of that. I'm going to go ahead and cut this top off. I can feel the tension of the shoulder seam, sleeve seam. And you don't have to perfectly match the stocking. If you want to make it a little bit rounder or what have you, you can do that, of course. Alright, so that one is done. Now as I take the stocking off, just for now I'm going to go ahead and repin this as I go. And you'll see that the stabilizer pin ended up being right there in the middle, which is where I wanted it to be. Okay, so this is kind of the moment of truth, and what we can do now is we can check our seams. And look at that. We got some good seams going on. This right here I knew was going to happen because of the neckline. So that will probably be the indication of where I cut it off, and then that's where we'll be sewing the cuff. So this is a good check to make sure that things are right. Now I can see that this line here is not perfect, so I can go ahead now and match that up before I end up sewing it, so that those now match up. Okay, one of the fun things about doing a video by yourself is you can't tell when the camera dies while you're taping. So I want to just go back to the whole matching thing. That part of the video got cut off, so I'm going to redo it. Once I got all the pins placed, I was able to take a look here and line things up a little bit better. So I looked at that seam, and I'm using the lines that are on here. So that's something to consider when you're selecting a patterned sweater for a project like this. If you've got easily identifiable marks that you can match up, that will make your life a whole lot easier in the long run. So I'm just going to go ahead and take these out and stretch and maneuver to make sure they fit. Okay, so that's probably the last thing that you're going to do before you do your seam here, is just to make sure that all your lines are matched up real nice. So that's that part of it. I've got one more stocking to cut out, and then we're going to head over to the sewing machine. Okay, so here we are with our two stockings all cut, and we've already went ahead and tested the seams to see if everything's lined up the way that we want them to be. And I'm going to go ahead and take out this first pin and put that in my pin cushion there. And I'm only going to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance, or maybe a little bit less than that. And I'm going to use the edge of my presser foot as my indicator. The reason I'm going to do such a thin seam allowance is because I'm going to zigzag this when I'm finished, just to add a little bit more stability to the seam. Because again, we're dealing with a knit fabric, and all those edges could unravel. So we're going to go ahead and just come in a little bit more. And I messed things up when I did my bobbin, so I want to make sure that I put my buttons back where I want them. Okay. There we go. Okay, so we should be ready to go. And this is pretty thick right here, so I may have to help it along. I do. I got to help it along a little bit. Okay, so now I should be ready to just mosey on out of there. And again, it's a really thick piece of material, so I'm having just a little bit of trouble here. Once I get past this little spot, I should be good. Alright, I got a thread that's not behaving, so let me get him out of the way and we should be good. Okay, now we're ready to go. Because this is not a garment, I'm not using a stretch stitch. This is simply an ornament. And I'm just going to follow the contours. Just check my stitches, make sure that I'm getting everything. I like to do that a little bit through my sewing project. Make sure I didn't miss something, and I can readjust as I go. If I had tried to sew this without the stabilizer, I would have been in misery, because it would have just stretched all over the place. Now, I noticed as I went, this has kind of gone under a bit. So by checking it on a regular basis, I'm able to account for that when I get to this side of it. So I'm just going to make I'm going to imagine where my line is. Okay, I'm back to even. Come back over here and get back to my 1/4 inch. And that happens from time to time. But as long as you keep looking at your project as you go, you can make adjustments like that. Okay, now I'm also going to take one quick look in here to make sure that I'm still pretty much lined up on my lines. And I can see this one just needs to get stretched just a tad so that my lines meet up. Again, it's a craft project, so it's not a garment, so it doesn't have to be perfect unless you're a perfectionist like I am. Okay. So we're having another moment of truth moment. Let's get our pins out of there. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it in before I trim that off, just to make sure that I like the way things are and I don't have to take it apart. Not too bad. Let's check the feet out here. The toes and the heel. Okay, folks, so there is our stocking, and I'm, well, not real happy with that, but I'm going to show you a trick at the end here. But that is going to look really, really nice. I've got it turned out this way, and while I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and check our cuff. I'm going to leave the seam that was at the end of the sweater, and that will give me an idea of how much of this I'm going to need. So we'll just pop it in there. Looks like if we go to about there, we should be good. So we're going to put a pin right there. I'm going to just double check on the edge here. And I'm going to pull it out just a slight bit because this is a thick piece of material that we're using. So we don't want it to end up being tight. We want it to be nice and loose. And that looks pretty good. I think what I'm going to do is just give it just a tad bit more. We've got plenty to work with. Okay, so that's the next part of it. We're just going to sew a real quick line. I do want to make sure that my bottom matches up. I don't want any extra down here. And let's go ahead and take that. The black pin was the line marking my seam allowance. We'll go ahead and stick that under and put that right at the edge. Alrighty. So let's get that done. Now remove my yellow pin. We're just going to do a straight line. I'm going to make sure the bottom edge here, and of course because it's a sweater material, it's going to pull, it's going to stretch just a little bit. Okay. So we're going to cut that one. We're going to cut that one. We'll get these out of here because they're just going to be making a mess when we... Now, the other thing I'm going to do, since I'm working with a big piece of material, is I'm not going to cut this off yet. Just in case I goofed, I'm going to give myself a chance. And we're going to sew right sides together, and that's one of the reasons why we turned this out. So we're going to pop this right inside here. Like that, and like that. Yep, I got a little bit extra, and I'm okay with that because I can always stretch it out to make it fit. Alright, so let me take a little break and make sure everything's good, and we'll come right back. So I double checked everything before I start to sew, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pin this in place. This is a very small circumference, and so it's going to get really tight around there. And so just to help me as I go, so things don't move around too bad, we're just going to pin things in place. Alright, now, I'm going to, I am a little bit, see what I've done now? Now that I've got it pinned in place, You see how big a gap that is? That might be more than I want to have. Although I think it's going to work. So I'm going to go ahead and leave that. Now, I am going to go ahead and start right here. Again, I'm just doing a 1/4 inch seam allowance because I'm going to go back and I'm going to zigzag my seams. So this may look a little awkward, but this is what happens when you're working on a project that has this small of a seam allowance. And I just realized I got to start over here. Okay, so we're going to try this again. So I'm going to put those two seams right together. Ouch. Sticking myself with pins as I go. Ho, ho, ho. Okay. So again, just a 1/4 inch. Get all my threads out of the way. Going in the right direction. And this part right here is really tight, so it's not going to take a whole lot of back stitching to secure it. Go ahead and get that pin out of my way. I'm having a flash. I am doing this totally wrong. Okay, so I had a flash as I sewed just that little bit, and I realized that I was doing this totally wrong. So I did have to go ahead and cut that off, and I want to go ahead and do a zigzag. And I want a wide zigzag. And a little bit longer stitch. Because this has to be tucked inside so that it will flap, when it rolls over, it'll roll over the top. So, we're going to quick get in here, do a bit of zigzagging to get this seam all nice and closed up. Okay. So there's my zigzag stitch. Not pretty, but it's going to be on the inside and it's not going to show. And it's just a little added security of the fact that it is a knit fabric and I don't want the knit to unravel. Okay, so here's where I goofed the first time. This has to actually be inside. And now I'm kind of wishing that I ironed that down. So I think before I go on, I'm going to go ahead and go back to my iron this down, and then we'll come right back and we'll put those two together. So I'll be right back. So I went ahead and not only did I iron that part down, but I added an extra one because this is going to be on the inside. Well, actually it's going to be underneath. But that way it's not going to buckle. And while I put this together, I just want to go ahead and add that, isn't it interesting that in life, as a crafter, you try to follow a pattern, and inevitably you have to make changes on the fly. This wasn't actually a pattern, it was just an idea that I had in my head. And so I've been kind of putting this together as I go. So it's just interesting that, you know, any kind of creative person, you have to be ready to make changes, and sometimes that happens. You have to do that on the fly, as I said. So, alrighty. Now the other thing that I've just noticed is, remember how I let it be just a little bit bigger? This is part of the problem. Let's do this. Okay, I'm working on it. I'm getting there, folks. Oh, just too funny. Let's stick him back in there now. I gotta think about this, because when I fold it over, it's gonna go that way. So yeah, it's gotta go in this way. Wrong sides together. That makes sense. So another perfect example of having to think on the fly. In woodworking and carpentry, they say measure once, cut twice, and I totally agree with that. here in the sewing world as well. And what I'm noticing as I sort of piece this together is I've got probably a little bit too much fabric. May cause me to do some puckering here and there, and I don't know if I want that to happen. So I'm just going to go ahead and test this out a little bit. I may be able to stretch the stocking enough that it fits, but I'm not liking how much extra fabric I have there. So I think we're going to go back to the drawing board. Okay, so I made just a couple of adjustments. I've tested everything out to make sure that it's going to flip over correctly. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here just after the seam, so that that seam is the last thing I end up sewing on here. Just so that my initial start, so to speak, can be a little bit more simple. Plus that'll allow me to establish a good forward and back. Okay, here we go. So we're doing just a 1/4 inch again, because we're going to zigzag everything closed. And we're going to take our time when we go over this one seam. Not bad. Okay, we're going to play around with this in here just a little bit more. Okay, I am going to end up having a pucker at the end, but again, it isn't a garment, so it is kind of a bummer. But that's the other reason about putting the finishing at the seam. It'll actually end up being at the back, and I'll do a pleat here at the end. Just like that. Okay. Alright, so I see a pucker happening, and what I do with that is, with the needle all the way down into the fabric, I'm going to go ahead and just use my scissors underneath the presser foot to put that back in position. We're going to take our time again through that seam because of how thick that is. Okay. Now, since I'm already there and I've already double checked everything, I'm going to go ahead and zip over to my zigzag, and we're going to go ahead, without cutting the thread or anything, we're going to go ahead and just zigzag around. So I know this is already done. Okay, as will inevitably happen during, well, I don't know about your sewing projects, but in my sewing projects, I get a jam in my sewing machine. So I had to clear my jam out. And then the next thing that will inevitably happen, especially because I'm zigzagging, is that I'm probably going to run out of bobbin thread, and I'll have to re-thread my bobbin. So we'll just wait for that to happen. That's coming up soon. And what I'm going to do here, since I haven't run out of bobbin thread yet, clip that little piece, is I'm going to go ahead and go around it one more time. Oh, and I ran out, just when I said I would. Okay, so I'm going to change the bobbin and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've gone ahead and got my bobbin rewound and re-threaded, and I'm going to guess that I was right there on the heavy part. So I'm going to actually start right before that heavy seam so that I can do a reverse. Okay. And we're going to head around one last time. The thing I like about doing a second turn is any of those little edges or frayed pieces of fabric or knit kind of get collected up during that last zigzag. Just makes your edges real nice. Okay, so I'm back to where I started. Alright, so our final moment of truth here, folks, is going to be the reveal of flipping this over. Ta-da! Oh, I found a thread. Oh, stray thread. So there we are, folks. We have a stocking made out of, oh, I really like that, a wool sweater. That is really nice. Oh my goodness. I know I'm a little shocked, but you know, you see something in your mind's eye and you know it'll work, and if you're creative like I am, you just have to try it. You just have to go for it. Okay, so the last piece of this that I'm going to do is I'm going to go underneath. Let's do that together right now. I'm going to go underneath here, and remember how I had that extra fabric here. I'm going to go ahead and trim that up. These are my thread scissors, so these aren't the best scissors. But I'm going to go ahead and trim that up a bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and zigzag the stocking. These are for our puppies, so dog treats can get a little bit heavy, so I just want to make sure that nothing's going to come out of there. So this is what the stocking looks like. Let's go ahead and look at it one more time before we sign off. A very fun project. Thank you for your patience as I work through some of my issues. I just think this is really cute, and while I made these for our puppies, you could certainly make these as a gift for a friend. But I think that was a really neat idea. So there you go. Merry Christmas, everyone, and have a lovely and happy New Year. Bye now.